I want to start talking about frequency tables, but I'd like to start out with an example that is something you might be familiar with, talking about grades. To start out on our Jupyter spreadsheet, let us import pandas as PD as we usually do. And I've created some fake class data. I created fake students for my class. I created fake exams for them to take, and they fake took them. And so I stored all of this in a comma-separated value file, fake class.csv. So I load that in. It had an index column loaded in the column 0, so I'm indicating that. So I just take pd.read_csv and store this in my data frame class_df. So shift enter, and it's in. What does this look like? Well, shift enter. The dot head shows me the first few rows, and the first column is the exam ID, and so these exams were numbered 0 through 3, so there are 4 exams altogether. The second column is the score that was made. The last column is the student ID. So student 0 on the 0th exam made a 76. Student 1 on the 0th exam made an 84, and so forth. Okay, so I would also have somewhere down below our exam 1 scores, and the same students repeat on exam 1, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, in this class, how am I assign scores? Well, one way is that you look at every student's score and you take the mean of all exams that student does. Now, the way that we can do this is we take our class DF and we choose to group all of the students together. And when we group them together, every single student stuff with himself, we take the average of that. So dot mean, this takes the average of all of the scores, and then I just want to look at the first few rows of this. So I shift and I enter, and this gives me quite a bit. Okay, it gives me the mean of the scores, but it also gives me the mean of all of the exam IDs. Well, I have exam IDs 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. So this is this column of exam IDs is kind of a meaningless average. However, the scores is what I will assign the final grade for the class on. Okay, so let's prepare to assign those grades. Okay. I'm going to create a data frame to store my grades in. I want it to be like this previous data frame, which was generated by my group by, but I don't want that exam ID in there. So what I do, this part is exactly what gave me that, but I want to get rid of the exam ID column. So I put a dot and then I drop, okay, the exam ID, and to let it know that I want to drop a column, I put axis equals 1 here. If I wanted to drop a row with a particular name, I would put the name of the row and then axis equals 0. But I want to drop a column, so it's axis equal 1 for dropping columns. And this next line I put here, I want to see what this looks like afterward. Well, let's see. And so there, this is what it looks like. It leaves a student ID and the average of his scores. Okay, the average of each student's scores. Okay, now I want to assign a grade to each of these scores. I use the standard 90, 80, 70, 60 method of assigning scores. So this function I've defined does that. Now this is the first time I believe I've defined a function in this course. So let's take a look. We begin with a def. Okay, I'm going to define a function. I put the name of the function, and then within parentheses I put the argument of the function. So in a function, something goes in, something goes out. The argument is what goes in, and I'm going to call that argument num for number. And then to indicate I'm about to define the body of my function, I put a colon. Okay. Now, my first statement in this function is an if statement. It says if this number is greater than 90, okay, I'm going to do something. So I put a colon. This is very common in Python syntax. You're about to do something different. You put a colon to indicate that. And here I'm going to return an answer. If my score was greater than 90, I return an A. And then I'm done. If my number was actually greater than 90, greater than or equal to 90, I'm done. My next step, I want to assign my B's. If my number is greater than or equal to 80, well, I've already got rid of my 90s. Okay, so anything left is a B, and so similar, greater than or equal to 70 is a C. Greater than or equal to 60 is a D, and if you haven't gotten out by now, it returns an F. Okay, I want to put this function in the spreadsheet. I then, having selected this cell, I shift and enter, and it goes in. Okay, now I want to assign these grades. So I'm going to create a new column for my course grades data frame. Besides the score, I'm going to put in a grade column, and my grade column, okay, with this syntax will be equal to, well, I'll take my scores and I will apply the function grade to the scores. This means at each of these numbers here, I'm going to apply my function and put out a score. So I apply the function, and then what does this look like afterwards? Well, let's look at the first few rows, and here it is. So I had an 80.75 as my average. Hey, that is a B. I had a 79.25. That is a C. And so forth. Okay, and each of these, it has assigned the grades correctly. Okay, now I'd like to say, how well are my students doing altogether? So I can create what's called a frequency table, which you look at each of the classes and you do a count. Okay, so I'm going to group by grade, and I'm going to count what falls within for each particular grade. So I'll show you. Shift and enter, and so grouped by grade out front, the grade of a B, there were 184. the grade of C, 166, the grade of D, 80, the grade of F, 70. Okay, which I'm kind of concerned because my fake students didn't do very fake well. I didn't get any A's. I like to see A's in a course, so I'm going to have to fiddle with my fake students a little bit to make them fake smarter. Let's look now at, I'd like to see a picture of this, and this in pandas. Pandas itself lets us do some simple graphing. Let's see here. We want to see how the grades are distributed, and this will refer back to my original course grades. I look at that particular column and I do a histogram. Okay, and that histogram I'll do my plot, and the histogram will pick out my categories from the categorical data and do a plot on it. So I shift enter, and okay, I know this works. I'm gonna go hit it again. Sometimes you have to hit it harder. There, and there you go. This is, see, the height of each of these columns corresponds to the number of items in each of these in my frequency table. Okay, and so there is my frequency table. I'm going to do another one of these in a separate video to show you how you can do this a little bit easier, but I wanted to connect it with something that you knew.